Story 1. Saying I saw it on Facebook is not the same as saying it is a verified source. Story 2. Manners. Being polite, such as saying thank you and please, are important. It is frustrating to see those small things disappear. I am 35, and it feels strange to realize that these behaviors are no longer considered common sense. Story 3. When you enter or exit through a door, you do not just stop as if you were a simulated character whose objective was suddenly deleted. Story 4. Emotional support animals are not the same as service animals, and the Americans with Disabilities Act applies only to service animals. That is why your yappy chiweenie was not allowed into the bar with you, even if it had a vest on. Story 5. I live in Philadelphia. I have to justify it almost every time I mention it because people start to freak out. Most big cities have good and bad areas, but the number of people who think all cities are permanent war zones is exaggerated. Story 6. Failure is part of life, and you are supposed to learn and grow from it. Story 7. Sometimes no is the answer. There is no one else to speak to, no special loophole, and no amount of bullying will change it. Story 8. Giving dangerously unstable people a megaphone that can reach the entire planet is a very bad idea. Story 9. Emotional regulation is expected of everyone after about age 15. If you cannot regulate your emotions and you are a danger to yourself or others, remove yourself from the situation or seek help. Regain composure, then communicate. You are responsible for your conduct even when dysregulated. Dysregulation does not excuse abusive or disrespectful behavior. Story 10. Don't keep valuables in your unlocked car, especially your wallet, purse, or handgun. Story 11. Do not pull out into 55 miles per hour or higher traffic right in front of another vehicle while traveling at 5 miles per hour. I am seeing a lot of transplants where I am, and the driving attitude is basically, screw you, you can brake for me. Story 12. Vaccines are the most important medical advancement of the 20th century and have had the largest single effect on community health. There is currently a large measles outbreak in Alberta. One community in particular allowed it to spread widely. Story 13. The Constitution. It is amazing how the last several years have shown that even our elected officials do not comprehend what politicians and citizens have upheld for the past 200 years. Story 14. Saying excuse me to interrupt a conversation, please, and thank you are basic manners. It seems they forgot about education. Story 15. No legitimate company will ever contact you about a problem you have. It is always a scam. Story 16. Do not approach wildlife. Do not pet bison. Do not encourage your children to approach wild animals to record videos. Do not attempt to examine or disturb rattlesnakes. Stay on the boardwalk in natural areas. Do not graffiti unspoiled parks. Do not litter. Story 17. If the hostess tells you the wait will be 45 minutes, and you see an empty table at that moment, it doesn't mean she has overlooked it. Someone other than you will be seated there first. Story 18. The more power and authority you have, the higher the standards you will be held to. We give strong people power because they are willing and able to make sacrifices and carry burdens for those less capable. Fuck your self-serving corporate achievements. Power is not a fucking reward. It is a responsibility. It is bullshit that a large percentage of people now see advancement, power, and wealth as the key to not having to put in real effort or be held accountable. Story 19. Put your cigarette butts out and dispose of them in the trash. Nobody is stopping you from smoking, but be a grown-up and throw your trash away. It is especially important if you live in a high-rise building and might toss them over the balcony. That is third-world behavior, and it does not even account for the massive fire hazard. Story 20. No means no. Too often people ignore that and follow, harass, or continue doing harmful things to someone for a prank or trend. Prank YouTubers have even been shot over it. You cannot say no without people reacting aggressively anymore, especially if you work in retail or any job that deals with the public. Story 21. We are accountable for our actions and decisions, and for the consequences of failing to act. I see too many adults blaming others or deflecting responsibility when dealing with a negative situation or outcome they themselves caused. Story 22. If someone asks a clarifying question, That does not automatically mean they are trying to pick a fight or make you angry. Story 23. You should not blow your entire paycheck and then have to stress every 2 weeks to see whether it is still there. I am not referring to people who barely make enough to live. I am referring to those who spend their money on luxuries they say they need. Story 24. Don't trust everything you see on the internet. This advice was beaten into my Xennial brain once upon a time, but it seems to have been largely forgotten by everyone, especially baby boomers. Story 25. No one wants to hear your conversation, so stop using the speakerphone. I hate walking through the grocery store and hearing entire conversations. For the love of all that is holy, stop taking calls in the bathroom. Story 26. You can search for anything. If I look it up, find a trustworthy source, and it shows you are wrong, I will not believe you anymore, not even if you repeat it louder or more angrily. Similarly, if you only read the artificial intelligence summary, I will not accept it until I verify it myself. I do not care whether it is a recipe for French toast or news about your favorite actor. If the only source is an artificial intelligence summary, I will not trust it. Story 27. When the internet first appeared, people used to say it was foolish to argue with a random person. It is commonplace now, and people often laugh out loud at the idea. If it is for fun, that is one thing, but if you are really getting frustrated with someone on the internet you have never met, why? That is the silliest thing. The piece of advice. I have met people who argued with me online. In real life, they speak normally and do not care much about what they argued online. Story 28. If the anti-fascist movement opposes fascism and you oppose that movement, you are effectively supporting fascism. If you say you hate pedophiles but defend someone who entered a dressing area where girls were changing, you are defending a pedophile. Story 29. Men are urinating on the toilet seat in a restroom. Do you do that at home? Story 30. Parents used to tell me not to believe everything I see on television. I now have to tell them not to believe everything they see on the internet. Story 31. Things I have to tell high school students. If the holes are on the left, you are writing on the front side of the paper. Keep your notebook organized from front to back. Do not write on random pages. Write your full name. When your work is complete, hand it to me. I cannot grade it if it is in your book bag. Story 32. More expensive does not always mean a better product. There are many factors that go into a price, and sometimes one of them is simply the seller's audacity. It is up to you to be a savvy consumer. Story 33. Don't walk up and down busy stairs while staring into the palm of your hand. Story 34. Racism, authoritarianism, and bullying are harmful. Peer-reviewed, evidence-based science is more credible than a random person's speculation. No matter how many followers they have on social media, the rich have a social responsibility to help those less fortunate than themselves. Story 35. If you need to change lanes but a car is in the lane next to you, do not accelerate ahead of them to turn into the parking lot. Tap your brakes, get behind the other vehicle, and then slow down before turning into the parking lot. Story 36. Puerto Rico is, in fact, part of the United States. The education system has failed us, just as they wanted. Story 37. Finding stuff on Google used to be quick and clean. Now it is advertisements up top, search engine optimization sludge in the middle, and 3 cookie pop-ups before an actual answer. Story 38. Say excuse me when passing between a person and a product on the shelves while going through the aisle, especially if you are on speakerphone with your incarcerated husband and wearing fake nails. Story 39. Reddit is not representative of the opinions of Americans. If you get all your information from Reddit, you should diversify your sources. Story 40. The fact that you do not know you are racist does not mean you are not racist. Story 41. A green arrow means you can turn in the direction of the arrow. I have lost count of how many times I have been behind someone at a green arrow, especially a right arrow, and had to honk because they just sit there. They do not turn. They just wait for some unknown reason. A green arrow is the clearest permission you will ever get to turn, and the people behind you trying to get to work are really hoping you will. Story 42. No, I can't take your 2x2-inch image and blow it up to fit on a billboard. It's pixelated, and I can't just remove the pixelation. I need a better image. You can try AI, but the text will likely be lost and the result will look generated. That's a problem when it comes from people who make 2 to 4 times as much as the designers and have master's degrees in advertising. Story 43. I'm not being disrespectful. I just want to have a discussion. Older people just hate to be proven wrong. Story 44. Just because the market works in a certain way does not mean what you are doing is morally okay. Story 45. Dressing for court. Do not wear pajamas. Do not wear super short, cut-off jeans with your buttocks showing. For the love of all that is good and holy, do not come to court drunk or high. The judge and your lawyer can tell. Story 46. Nazism is unacceptable, and people who support it should be shamed and ostracized. Story 47. Use it or lose it. I cannot count the number of times I have had to explain to my mother that exercise is not fun and may be painful, but if you do not work to keep yourself in shape, it only gets worse. Story 48. You should not use your phone in the cinema while the film is on. I have been to the cinema many times this year, and people scroll on their phones throughout the film with their screens at full brightness. Story 49. I conducted my own research. That does not mean your Google search is equivalent to actual scientific research. Story 50. Vaccines. Saving the environment. Understanding verified sources. Researching and citing sources to support your claims. Story 51. Indisputable facts. People move the goalposts to the fucking moon now to fit their narratives. Story 52. Fascism, Christian nationalism, and white supremacy are bad and un-American. Story 53. Take all the prescribed antibiotics, even if you start feeling better. Story 54. It is not okay to listen to loud audio without headphones while you are on public transport. Story 55. Just because someone posts publicly on Instagram and Facebook and so on does not mean they deserve to be bullied for putting their life out there. I'm sorry, but what the actual fuck? You live your life in public daily. Would it be fine with you if I walked up and insulted you in the worst way possible and told you to unalive yourself? No? Okay then. You do understand it is not okay. And you really are that horrible of a person. Don't get me wrong. I cannot stand toxic influencers and they should absolutely be called out for their nonsense. However, the insane comments I have seen on posts from people trying to better themselves or bring awareness to an illness or an eating disorder are unbelievable. Story 56. Hitler and his actions were wrong on every level. I would like to think this should not even need to be explained, but after Vance made light of those disgusting text chats praising Hitler in gas chambers, I have never felt so ashamed to be living on the same planet as these people. I would not even find it remotely acceptable for a 10-year-old to say these things, let alone for 30 to 40-year-olds. Story 57. When I worked in retail, I had to explain to an adult woman older than me that credit cards don't fill up at the start of a new month just because her card was declined. Story 58. I do not understand why people let themselves get triggered or have their day ruined by things beyond their control. Avoid social media, news channels, and content designed to rile you up and keep you hooked. Take a break now and then. It is not that bad. Story 59. Automatic doors for people with disabilities are intended for those people. When non-disabled people overuse them, the doors stop working and require maintenance, which means they might be out of service when I need them. On top of that, I often press the button and people walk past me while I am trying to enter, so the door hits me and knocks me off balance. When I have to use the regular door, many people just walk in, sometimes in groups, and do not offer to hold the door for me. This happens across all ages, races, and creeds. It drives me nuts. Story 60. Listening to experts, especially those in the scientific community. Story 61. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Integrity is important. Each generation owes the next something, if you believe in humanity. Principles should be non-negotiable, provided you make space for learning along the way. I am an adult, rather old, but also naive and fallible. I used to think the lessons we learned as children in kindergarten were universally understood and respected. That is how they were presented. It turns out they were not. Bad faith is widespread, And learning to recognize dishonesty is an important skill. Story 62. This is a new phenomenon, but it surprises me when people talk on speakerphone or FaceTime in public. It is unbelievably rude. Story 63. A specific one. I work in a hardware store with a popcorn machine. It is a real hassle for the store. I never have to tell children to use the scoop to get their own popcorn. But at least twice a week, I have to chase off full-grown adults who stick their whole hand into the popcorn, refusing to use a scoop. What? You think my hands are dirty? Yes, I do. Now use a scoop like the big kid I know you are. I'm tired of throwing out popcorn. Story 64. Just because someone is offended by what you said does not mean you have won the debate. It just means you are an asshole. Story 65. Hitler was a fascist. Being against fascism is a good thing. Story 66. Speaking or being friendly with children who are not yours. Story 67. I am neither a man nor a woman. It is real. Please stop insulting me. I am only 16 years old. Story 68. Do not give out more information about yourself than is absolutely necessary. Story 69. Reposting the same content you saw yesterday for karma. People used to know better. Now they are too stupid. Story 70. Nothing that another person does or believes is any of your business as long as it does not directly impact your life. Story 71. Beating the fascists in 2 world wars felt great. It was tiring and costly, but ultimately worthwhile. A third time will not be lucky or better and is entirely unnecessary. You are now adults and may not know recent history because of a poor education system. Educate yourself and vote those people out of office. Story 72. If you act in a way that would cause things to stop working if everyone did the same, you are being an asshole. Story 73. I am so sick of grown adults who are paid $100,000 per year to operate a computer and then say, "Fix it. I am bad with computers." Story 74. I have learned a lot about relationship dynamics. Most of the male and female friends I have had do not know what they are doing to build something that lasts for years instead of only 2 short, insincere months. Story 75. Lay's potato chips are made from potatoes. Apparently 42% of people did not know. Story 76. Eating with your mouth closed. I really feel like that's a dying rule. Story 77. What annoys me is parents who let children disrespect adults. They treat their children as if they are adults even though they are not. I grew up in the 1990s. My parents were not that strict, but treating adults with respect was absolutely required. Story 78. When driving, the number of people who brake when there is no hazard ahead is infuriating. It is most likely caused by people looking at their phones. Also, people slow down on the freeway to look at collisions on the other side of the median. I do not remember it ever being this bad. Story 79. I work in emergency medical services. I often have to explain that we will not send an ambulance for a sore throat, cough, or toothache. We also do not send an ambulance for people who fall out of bed, get back into bed with no injuries and just want a paramedic to check them over. Some people call after leaving the accident and emergency department because the wait was too long and they think an ambulance will get them seen sooner. Ambulances are generally for life-threatening emergencies. It seems many people have forgotten that. Story 80. I have a few of these habits that I still struggle with. If you are tired, get up and do something. If you are aching, stretch. Our nervous system has 2 modes, one for protection and one for healing. When you try to get someone's attention and they do not react, that is not an invitation to keep trying. Silence speaks. It means the person does not want to engage in conversation. Stop snapping your fingers in people's faces. I dislike when people fail to recognize that my silence means I do not want to talk. If you like listening to music, use earbuds. It is better for others. Blasting music into the air is not a concert, and you are not getting ticket money. In fact, you might end up paying a fine. If we wanted music, we would turn our own on. Songs at 500 decibels are just annoying. If what we feel hurts you, there is nothing anyone can do about that. We all have a right to our own feelings, so the best response is to drop it or walk away. This applies to religion, politics, culture, and even food. My mother may have put a lot of work into dinner, but if my brother does not like it, that is his preference. It is not my mother's fault, and it is not my brother's fault. It is not mean or rude to say how you feel. If you are offended, manage your feelings too. Life is 20% what happens to you and 80% how you respond to it. Story 81. Social media is not a reliable source of information, and influencer follower counts do not indicate credibility. Story 82. Patience and investing your time. Good things need time. There are often no shortcuts. I feel things like shorts, reels, and all short-form content, also known as brain rot, have given most people the attention span of a chipmunk with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder on 6 cans of Red Bull. It shows in many ways. Learning a new skill or language takes time, but many people no longer have the attention span to learn or to invest time in themselves. Even video games and in-person board games used to have a slow build-up and a satisfying grind. Now games must provide instant gratification and immediate action. If a game round takes longer than 15 minutes, many people consider it too long. Even when going out to dinner, to the movies, or watching a show, many people constantly look at their phones to get another small hit of content. I call this the instant gratification generation. If anything takes longer than 10 minutes, many people move on. Story 83. If you do not know what to do, read the instructions. Ask an expert. Try to figure it out. Story 84. I am now having to explain why it is called male and female pipe threads to new hires. Also, when explaining electrical current, nobody gets my joke anymore about alternating current and direct current not being just a band. I feel old. Story 85. Basic physical boundaries. You cannot touch me or hug me whenever you feel like it. I am not your emotional support person. Do not continue, especially if I have told you multiple times that it makes me uncomfortable to be grabbed, kissed, or massaged. Keep your hands to yourself. Story 86. Woman is singular. Women is plural. How are they pronounced? Also, female is not a synonym. Female what? Human? We already have a word for that. Story 87. Opinions do not carry the same authority as established facts. Stupidity and ignorance are not virtues. If the law applies only to certain groups of people, then you do not, in fact, have a free society. You have serfdom and slavery. Story 88. Seriously, what happened to media comprehension? A lot of people I know seem to be completely befuddled by anything more complex than a 4th grade level. That is not to say I do not struggle, albeit rarely, but damn. Story 89. Hamas is a terrorist organization bent on killing as many Jews as possible. Story 90. When you hint at something you want someone to do, say, or think, you are relying too much on their ability to notice the hint, interpret it exactly as you intended, and then act on it. This places too much responsibility on someone else simply because you do not want to, or do not know how to, be clear and direct. Story 91. Putting the damn toilet seat up. I still know people in their 30s who do not do this. I am shaking my head. Story 92. Look both ways before crossing the street. The choices are to keep looking at your phone and walk into traffic, or, even worse, make eye contact with a moving car and then walk directly in front of it, thinking the car is going to stop. Story 93. It used to be common sense. Now I call it sense, and I think it might be a superpower in today's world. Story 94. Midnight is 0 hours. It is a new day. Wild concept, I know, but that is how it goes. Story 95. Most people do not use logic as reliably as they think they do. Story 96. Don't let your kids run around screaming in stores, restaurants, or gas station parking lots. Story 97. Reading the instructions that came with it makes it much easier to learn how to use, assemble, or troubleshoot it. Story 98. That common sense is not sense at all. It is just a collection of biases formed by the age of 18. Story 99. How to change a tire. How to change your battery. How to grow a tomato. How to do your taxes. The list goes on. Story 100. When you are walking in a parking lot, avoid stepping on grease. It gets on your shoes and you end up tracking it. I do not want my shoes greased up. I would not ask them to slop across car grease. Maybe I am crazy. Story 101. Your parents are just people, not all-knowing gods. Except in actual Child Protective Services level cases, they did what they knew how to do, and most likely you were mildly harmed in the process. That said, you can still be frustrated with them because you are also human. Story 102. Calling international numbers on a mobile costs money. I work in a customer service call center for a mobile phone company and have noticed I have been getting more calls lately from people who, for some reason, thought calling other countries would be free. Obviously, it is not. No phone company would make calls from the United Kingdom to other countries free. Story 103. I had to tell someone to remove explosives from his mouth. Story 104. I had to explain to coworkers what part 2, electric boogaloo, meant as a figure of speech. Story 105. I grew up being told to be careful because strangers on the internet would kidnap us. It baffles me that my dad has had his identity stolen at least 3 times because he tried to buy a gun part online. Story 106. I had to explain it to a friend once. She called a restaurant to ask the price of a reservation. The restaurant messaged her with the price and the available deals and asked if she wanted to book. She replied no. She only wanted to know the price. When it was time for dinner, there was no reservation. She insisted there had been a booking and caused a scene. We showed the manager the messages, which clearly showed she did not want to book. She tried to get the manager to tell us the restaurant had made a mistake. I had to explain to her that she had made the mistake and showed her the proof on her phone. Story 107. It used to be common sense that popularity was not always an indicator of quality and credibility, but too many people hold this ignorant, hypocritical opinion. Since my opinion is popular, it must be true. Story 108. I am a teacher. There is no excuse for ever screaming at or cursing a student, regardless of age. Speak sternly and raise your voice so people can hear you over commotion, but do not yell or curse at a student. You will lose the respect of the class, and worse, they will know what angers you and have ammunition to use against you. Story 109. Movie theaters used to be places where whispers were the enemy, not full conversations. I sat through a romantic comedy on date night with a peanut gallery narrating the plot. It felt like crashing my own awkward first kiss flashback. Story 110. Older people are blasting their phones at maximum volume in public. I don't need to listen to your conversation on speakerphone while I'm in a restaurant. Story 111. I've had conversations with fully grown adults that went something like this. Me. The average adult lifespan worldwide is around 72 years. Adult. But I knew a guy who knew a guy who was 95. Me. I know, I'm talking about the average person on Earth. Adult. But what about that guy? Me. Sigh. Story 112. If 2 adults want to have a consensual relationship or liaison, it is their decision, not yours. No, it is not pedophilia. Story 113. Saying something mean is not the same as hitting someone. Story 114. You should actually get dressed in something other than pajamas and slippers, brush your hair and teeth, and, better yet, take a shower before heading to the stores. Story 115. People can have different opinions or beliefs and should not be attacked for them. Story 116. Our society can only function if couples have and raise productive children. Story 117. Accountability is an individual responsibility. You are not responsible for the actions of your group, your race, your gender, or people in the past who shared your biological sex or race. If you do something wrong, you must be held accountable regardless of your group or biological sex. Story 118. 20% of the money should go into a fidelity account starting at age 0. Story 119. Mental health issues are real and serious and should be kept private. Story 120. Imagine the downvotes if someone were to respond with balancing a checkbook. Story 121. Tipping and sales tax math. Many of my friends cannot calculate sales tax or tips in their heads and need to use their phones. Story 122. How to navigate Netflix and change the channel on a television. Story 123. Government jobs used to mean stability. Now it's like, congratulations, you survived. Story 124. Many people say that Wikipedia is not a valid source. I work with adults and teenagers on their research papers, and this question comes up often. I was told the same by teachers when I was in 6th grade, and now people training to become teachers use Wikipedia for major assignments. Story 125. The first version of events you hear is not automatically the correct version. If you hear one side of a story you were not present for, you should give the other side equal credence. If you require the other person to prove the first account wrong before you listen to them with an open mind, you are showing strong confirmation bias. Story 126. You are not always right. I don't know if things are worse now than in the past, but even with wide access to information, the ability to research and find context, and the abundance of different perspectives, people often form opinions from conjecture, anecdotes, or repeated marketing or messaging. They will stubbornly insist they are 100% right even when evidence is insufficient, contradicts them, or a normal margin of human error applies. I do not know if it is pride, but we must accept our mistakes, learn from them, grow, and move on. Story 127. Say good morning to people and shake hands politely in public. Sources are still necessary even with artificial intelligence. Story 128. The left lane is for passing. Learn to drive correctly. Story 129. Do not give out large amounts of personal information online. If you do something that might get you into trouble, do not post about it on social media. Many people today lack a basic sense of internet safety. Story 130. Elevators, man. People have to come out before others can go in. Story 131. You cannot use leave that you do not have. Every new hire comes in and thinks being absent without leave is normal. Story 132. I had to bite my tongue earlier today when someone was ranting about magical shelf-stable milk. He was older than I am and should remember the push for ultra-high temperature milk. Story 133. Say excuse me when you would like to pass instead of pushing your way through. Story 134. The earth is not flat. Vaccines work. Billionaires do not care about you. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.